November 6th, 1944, 3:03 a.m., somewhere in Czechoslovakia. Captain Jack Morrison's hand hovers above the canopy release. The metal is cold enough to burn bare skin. He can see his breath in the darkness. White clouds that give away his position to anyone looking. He shouldn't be here. 4 days ago he was flying a P-51 Mustang over this same forest. 4 days ago he had a working aircraft, a full belly, and a reasonable expectation of seeing tomorrow. 4 days ago he was on the winning side of this war. Now he's crouched beside a German fighter aircraft 200 miles behind enemy lines, trying to decide if he's brave enough to become a thief or smart enough to walk away. The Focke-Wulf 190 sits in its revetment like a predator at rest. Camouflage netting drapes across the wings. The BMW radial engine still ticks as it cools from yesterday's maintenance run. Morrison can smell aviation fuel and gun oil. Familiar scents, comforting almost. Except every label in that cockpit is in German. Every switch, every gauge, every warning placard. Gothic script he can't read. A language he doesn't speak. Controls he's never touched. And somewhere out there in the darkness, 50 yards away, a Wehrmacht sentry is walking his patrol route. Morrison can hear the boots on frozen ground. Steady rhythm. Professional. The kind of soldier who doesn't fall asleep on duty. Morrison's ankle throbs. He twisted it 4 days ago when the parachute landing went wrong. Not broken, but swollen. Every step since then has been a reminder that his body is running on borrowed time. His stomach stopped growling yesterday. That's not a good sign. When the hunger pangs stop, it means the body has moved past wanting food and started consuming itself. Muscle tissue breaking down to keep the brain alive. Morrison learned that in survival school. He just never thought he'd experience it. The temperature is 8 degrees below 0 Celsius. That's 17 Fahrenheit for the farm kid from upstate New York who still thinks in the units his father used. Cold enough that the moisture in his nose freezes when he breathes in. Cold enough that his fingers are going numb even inside his flight gloves. He has a choice to make. Pull that canopy release. Climb into that cockpit. Figure out how to start a German aircraft he's never flown. Take off from a hostile airfield in the dark. Fly 200 miles through enemy territory. Land at a friendly base without getting shot down by his own side. Or walk 100 yards to that gate. Put his hands up. Surrender to the Luftwaffe. Spend the rest of the war in Stalag Luft 3, eating Red Cross packages and playing cards with other captured pilots. The smart choice is obvious, but Jack Morrison stopped making smart choices 4 days ago when he decided to head north instead of south. North toward the enemy, north toward this airfield. North toward the most insane escape attempt any downed pilot has ever conceived. 18 minutes until dawn patrol. 18 minutes until the mechanics arrive and find him here. The sentry's footsteps are getting louder. Morrison takes a breath. The cold air burns his lungs. He reaches for the canopy. 4 days earlier, November 2nd, 1944, 3:47 p.m., 12,000 feet above Czechoslovakia. Morrison leads a 4-ship formation of P-51 Mustangs toward a German airfield near the Czech-German border. Their mission is simple. Strafe the field. Destroy as many enemy aircraft on the ground as possible. Get out before the flak batteries turn them into scrap metal. Morrison's Mustang is named Angel's Playmate. There's a blonde pin-up painted on the nose. His crew chief's work. Morrison doesn't remember which Hollywood actress the painting is supposed to represent. After 70 combat missions, they all start to look the same. What he does remember is how this aircraft handles, the way the stick feels in his right hand, the pressure required on the rudder pedals to keep the nose straight during a gun run, the slight vibration at 380 miles per hour that means everything is working as designed. He knows this machine, trusts it, has brought it home from missions that should have killed him. The airfield appears below. Morrison can see Junkers Ju-88 bombers parked in neat rows. German efficiency. Everything organized. Everything predictable. He keys his radio. Hawk flight line abreast. We'll take one pass north to south. Target the bombers first. 3 clicks acknowledge his transmission. His wingmen know the drill. Morrison pushes the stick forward. Angel's Playmate drops toward the earth. The altimeter unwinds. 10,000 feet, 8,000, 6,000. The airfield grows larger in his windscreen. He can see people running now. Tiny figures scattering toward the tree line. Someone down there just realized what's about to happen. 4,000 feet. Morrison's thumb hovers over the gun trigger. 6.50 caliber machine guns loaded and ready. Enough firepower to tear a bomber apart. 3,000 feet. He's committed now. Too low to pull up without completing the run. The flak batteries open up. Morrison sees the muzzle flashes first. Dozens of them. Then the black puffs of exploding shells start appearing around his aircraft. 88mm anti-aircraft guns. German gunners are very good at their job. They track him. Adjust. Fire again. 2,000 feet. Morrison centers his gun sight on a Ju-88. His finger tightens on the trigger. The P-51 shudders as all 6 guns fire. Tracers arc toward the bomber. He sees the rounds impact. Wings shredding, fuel tanks rupturing. The bomber explodes. Morrison pulls up, hard. 6 Gs pressing him into his seat. The edges of his vision grey out. He levels off at 1,500 feet. Another target ahead. Another bomber. He fires again. That's when the shell fragment hits his engine. He doesn't see it happen. Doesn't hear it over the roar of the Merlin engine and the hammering of his own guns. What he notices is the oil pressure gauge. It drops to 0. 1 second it's reading 80 pounds per square inch. Normal. Healthy. The next second it's pinned at the bottom of the dial. Black smoke starts pouring from the cowling. The engine temperature gauge climbs. Red line. Beyond red line. The needled pegs at maximum. Morrison knows what happened without looking. An 88mm shell, probably a fragment, not a direct hit, punched through the engine compartment and severed the oil line. Without oil, the Rolls-Royce Merlin 512 will seize in approximately 90 seconds. The pistons will weld themselves to the cylinder walls. The crankshaft will stop turning. The propeller will become a 400-pound anchor on the front of his aircraft. After that, the P-51 becomes a glider with the aerodynamic properties of a brick. He has one option. Morrison pulls back the canopy. The wind hits him like a fist. 300 miles per hour. His eyes water. His oxygen mask tears loose. He doesn't care. He rolls the aircraft inverted, pulls his legs up, kicks away from the seat, and drops into the sky. The parachute opens at 6,000 feet. The silk canopy cracks like a gunshot. Morrison's entire body jerks as the harness straps catch him. His ankle twists. Pain shoots up his leg. Not broken, he can tell, but badly sprained. Below him, Angel's playmate continues flying inverted for another 3 seconds. Then the nose drops. The aircraft enters a flat spin. Morrison watches it fall, watches it hit the forest canopy 2 miles away. There's a flash, an explosion, a column of black smoke rising into the afternoon sky. 70 missions. She brought him home from everyone. Not this time. Morrison looks around. He's still descending, still 2 minutes from the ground. The parachute silk hisses above him. The wind carries him west, away from the airfield, toward the forest. The mathematics of his situation are simple and brutal. He is 200 miles behind German lines. The front has moved west, but not fast enough. This part of Czechoslovakia is still occupied, still crawling with Wehrmacht patrols, still very much enemy territory. American pilots shot down over occupied Europe have a 23% chance of evading capture and returning to Allied lines. Morrison knows that statistic. They briefed it during survival training. 23%. Less than 1 in 4. The other 77% spend the rest of the war in prisoner camps, or end up in unmarked graves when they meet Wehrmacht soldiers who aren't interested in taking prisoners, or get handed over to the SS, who have their own ideas about what to do with Allied airmen. Morrison has a point. 4.5 caliber pistols strapped to his hip. 7 rounds. Standard issue for pilots. Useful for signaling friendly forces or putting a bullet in your own head if capture looks worse than dying. No food, no water. No cold weather gear beyond his flight suit. No maps beyond what he memorized during the mission briefing. November in Central Europe. The temperature will drop below freezing tonight. Well below. He's a dead man. He just hasn't stopped breathing yet. Morrison hits the ground hard. His boots sink into frozen mud. His ankle screams. He collapses, lies there for 10 seconds breathing, listening. Voices, German voices, far away, maybe 400 yards, shouting, probably search parties organizing. Morrison gathers the parachute silk. He pulls it into a ball, finds a depression in the ground beneath some bushes, stuffs the parachute inside, covers it with leaves and dirt. Not perfect, but it'll have to do. He needs to move. Now, the doctrine is clear. Downed pilots move away from their landing site, fast. Put distance between yourself and the search parties, then hide. Wait for nightfall. Use the darkness to travel. Head west, toward Allied lines, toward safety. Morrison looks west. 200 miles of enemy territory. Wehrmacht patrols every 2 or 3 miles. Roads blocked, bridges guarded. No food, no shelter. Winter coming. Then he looks north. 5 miles north, according to his mental map, is the airfield he just attacked. The one where all those Junkers bombers were parked. The one with hangars, maintenance facilities, fuel trucks, food, water, also crawling with German soldiers who will shoot him on sight. Morrison makes a decision that will save his life or end it. He starts walking north. The logic is counterintuitive, which means it's probably the only option that will work. The Germans expect him to run away from them, south toward Allied lines or west toward France. They'll concentrate their search in those directions, fan out from his landing site, block the obvious escape routes. They won't expect him to move toward the airfield, closer to their base, deeper into enemy territory. And if he's going to survive more than 48 hours, he needs supplies. Food, water, maybe a weapon better than a pistol with 7 rounds. The airfield has all of that. Morrison moves through the forest, stays off the roads, keeps to the thick undergrowth where the trees provide cover. His ankle throbs with every step. He can feel it swelling inside his boot. The afternoon light fades. The temperature drops. Morrison's breath comes out in white clouds. He's burning calories just trying to stay warm. 4,000 calories a day, maybe more. That's what the body requires when fighting hypothermia. He hasn't eaten since breakfast. A piece of toast and some coffee. 12 hours ago, back when he had an aircraft and a future. Morrison finds a stream just before dark. He drinks. The water is cold enough to make his teeth ache. His throat goes numb. But it's water. He'll need it. He hears engines, German trucks on a nearby road. Morrison lies flat in a ditch, doesn't move. Doesn't. The trucks pass. Troop transport. Probably search parties. They're looking for him. But they're looking in the wrong direction. Day 2. Morrison wakes up shivering. He didn't mean to fall asleep. Sleep in sub-freezing temperatures without shelter is a good way to die. But his body shut down anyway, demanded rest. He's alive. That's unexpected. The sun is up. Morrison checks his position. He's maybe 3 miles from the airfield now. Made good distance yesterday despite the ankle. He needs to keep moving. But daylight movement is suicide. Too easy to spot. Too many eyes. He finds a hollow beneath a fallen tree, crawls inside, pulls leaves over himself, waits for nightfall. His stomach growls. Not hunger exactly, more like a reminder that the body needs fuel. Morrison ignores it. Nothing he can do about it now. He thinks about Angel's playmate, about his wingmen who probably saw him bail out. They'll file a report. KIA or MIA. Killed in action or missing in action. Either way, Morrison's name goes on a list. A telegram gets sent to his mother in Union Springs, New York. Mrs. Morrison regrets to inform you. He pushes the thought away. Focus on now, on survival, on getting home. A German patrol passes 200 yards away. 4 soldiers. They're not searching, just routine movement. Morrison lies still. Doesn't breathe. Doesn't blink. They pass. Morrison waits another hour, then starts moving again. Day 3. The hunger is different now. It's not a growling stomach anymore. It's a hollow feeling, an emptiness that goes beyond the digestive system. Morrison's body is starting to cannibalize itself, breaking down muscle tissue, converting protein to glucose, feeding the brain at the expense of everything else. He can feel it happening, a weakness in his limbs, a fuzziness in his thinking. His hands shake when he holds them out. Morrison knows the science. Survival training covered this. The human body can survive 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, 3 hours without shelter in extreme cold. He has water. He has minimal shelter. The food is the problem. More accurately, the complete absence of food is the problem. He's burning 4,000 calories per day, consuming 0. The math is not in his favor. Morrison reaches the tree line overlooking the German airfield. It's late afternoon. The sun is low. Long shadows stretch across the field. He can see hangars, fuel trucks, aircraft, FW-19 OHs mostly, a few Bf-109s, Messerschmitt fighters, the Luftwaffe's best. There are people moving around. Mechanics, ground crew, not many. This isn't a major base, just a forward airfield for supporting local operations. Morrison settles into position, hidden in the underbrush, watching, learning the rhythm of the base, when patrols move, where the sentries are posted, how the security works. He makes a decision. Tomorrow morning he's going to walk to the main gate with his hands up. Surrender to the Luftwaffe. Accept prisoner of war status. Spend the rest of the war in a camp somewhere. It's the smart choice, the survival choice. Luftwaffe treats captured pilots better than the Wehrmacht or SS. There's a code among aviators, a respect for fellow flyers, even enemy ones. Morrison knows pilots who've been shot down and captured. They describe Stalag Luft 3 as boring but survivable. 3 meals a day, Red Cross packages, letters from home, card games, theatre productions put on by the prisoners. Boring, but alive. Better than freezing to death in a Czech forest. Morrison's mind is made up. Tomorrow at dawn he surrenders. He settles in to wait through one more night. Then he sees the airplane. It's in a revetment 80 yards from his position, partially concealed by camouflage netting. A Focke-Wulf FW-190. Single-seat fighter, single engine. The Luftwaffe's premier interceptor. 2 German mechanics are working on the aircraft. They've pulled the cowling off. Morrison can see the BMW 801 radial engine. 14 cylinders arranged in 2 rows, 1,700 horsepower. That's more power than the Merlin in his P-51. The older mechanic appears to be in charge, maybe 45 years old. Obergefreiter rank insignia. That's roughly equivalent to an American corporal. He moves with the precision of a man who's been working on aircraft engines for 20 years. The younger mechanic is just a kid, 19 maybe, apprentice. He follows the older man's instructions, hands him tools, takes notes. Morrison watches them work. They check the fuel level. Full tanks. They run up the engine. The BMW 801 roars to life. Deep growl, different from the Merlin's scream, more visceral. The sound of barely controlled explosions. They cycle the propeller, check the magnetos, run through what appears to be a complete pre-flight inspection. Then they shut it down, cover the cockpit with a tarp, button up the cowling. The older mechanic says something to the apprentice. Morrison can't hear the words, but he can read the body language. Pride. This is a man who takes his work seriously, who builds things that don't break, who would rather die than let a pilot go up in an aircraft that isn't perfect. They walk back toward the main hangars. It's almost 6 p.m. Shift change. Time for dinner in the mess hall. Morrison stares at the FW-190. The aircraft is ready to fly. Full fuel, tested engine, perfect maintenance, and there's no guard posted. Morrison's brain starts calculating, running scenarios, measuring possibilities. He's never flown a German aircraft, doesn't speak German, has no idea where the controls are, how the engine starts, how the landing gear operates. But he knows how to fly. He's logged over 500 combat hours. Every aircraft has a throttle, a stick, and rudder pedals. The physics don't change because the labels are in German. And he's looking at a fully fueled fighter aircraft with no guard. The surrender plan starts to dissolve. Morrison stays in the tree line, watching, thinking. A memory surfaces. Not recent, ancient, 5 years ago, a lifetime ago. 1939. Union Springs, New York. Jack Morrison is 15 years old. Skinny farm kid with dirt under his fingernails and an obsession with anything that flies. His father's cousin, Earl Hutchins, owns a crop duster business. Single Stearman biplane, yellow fabric wings, Pratt & Whitney radial engine. Earl uses it to spray pesticides on farms throughout the region. Morrison works for Earl during the summer, mixing chemicals, loading the hopper, refueling between runs. Farm work, hard work, the kind that builds calluses and character. But what Morrison really wants is to fly. Earl sees it in the kid's eyes. That hunger, that need. He remembers feeling the same way himself 20 years earlier, before the First War. Before he spent 2 years flying observation planes over France. Before he came home with shrapnel in his leg and nightmares that never quite went away. One afternoon in August, Earl lets the kid take the controls. "Keep her straight and level," Earl says from the back seat. "Feel how she responds. Don't fight the stick. Let the airplane tell you what she wants." Morrison's hands are shaking. He's 15 years old and he's flying an airplane. The horizon stretches out in front of him. The Finger Lakes region of New York spreading out below, fields and forests and small towns. The world from a perspective most people never see. He's hooked, completely, irreversibly. By the time Morrison turns 16, he has more stick time than most Army Air Corps cadets. Earl lets him fly every chance he gets, teaches him navigation, weather reading, how to recognize when an engine is running rough, how to feel a stall coming before the instruments tell you. One evening they're sitting in Earl's workshop. The Stearman is parked outside. Morrison is helping Earl overhaul a carburetor. Earl pulls out a photograph, old, faded, black and white, black. It shows the wreckage of a German aircraft. A Fokker, Morrison thinks, World War I vintage. "Took this in 1918, Earl says. "We shot this one down near Chateau Thierry. Pilot survived. We pulled him out of the wreck. He was maybe 20 years old, younger than me." Morrison studies the photo. He can see German markings on the wings, black crosses, strange letters. "We got to talking," Earl continues. "His English was decent, better than my German anyway. He told me about his training, the controls in German aircraft, how they're arranged." Earl points to the cockpit in the photo. Labels were all in German, obviously, but the layout was the same as our planes. Throttle on the left, stick in the center, rudder pedals on the floor. Physics doesn't change because you speak a different language. Morrison looks at Earl. "Why are you telling me this?" Earl is quiet for a moment. Outside, the summer crickets are starting their evening chorus. "Because war is coming," Earl finally says. "Hitler invaded Poland last month. France and England declared war. It's just a matter of time before we get dragged in. And when that happens, you're going to volunteer. I know you. Can't stop you." Morrison doesn't argue. Earl is right. The moment America enters the war, Morrison will be at the recruiting station. "So I'm teaching you everything I know," Earl says. "Including this, someday you might find yourself sitting in a German cockpit. Maybe your plane got shot down. Maybe you stole one. Maybe you're just curious. Doesn't matter. What matters is you remember that labels don't matter. Throttle, stick, rudder. Find those 3 things and you can fly it." Morrison looks at the photograph again. German wreckage. Strange language. Foreign machinery. "Why would I ever fly a German plane?" he asks. Earl meets his eyes. "Because you're alive and it flies. That's reason enough." November 6th, 1944, 2:47 a.m. Morrison waits until the airfield is quiet. Skeleton crew on night watch. Minimal activity. The sentries are walking their routes. Predictable, professional. But they're not expecting trouble from inside the perimeter. He moves. 80 yards of open ground. No cover. No concealment. Just frozen mud and darkness. If anyone looks in his direction, he's dead. Morrison covers the distance in 40 seconds. His ankle screams with every step. He ignores it, reaches the revetment, presses himself against the camouflage netting, listens. Nothing. No shouts, no alarms, no running footsteps. He pulls the netting aside. The FW-190 sits there like a gift. Morrison circles the aircraft once, checking, looking for obvious problems. The landing gear looks solid, the tires are inflated, the control surfaces move freely when he pushes on them. The propeller blades are undamaged. This is a well-maintained aircraft. The mechanic that Obergefreiter did his job right. Morrison climbs onto the wing. The canopy is unlocked. The tarp comes off easily. He slides the canopy back and drops into the cockpit, and immediately realizes the magnitude of what he's attempting. Every label is in German, every gauge, every switch, every warning placard, Gothic script that might as well be hieroglyphics. The instrument panel is a wall of incomprehensible text. Morrison sits there in the darkness looking at controls he can't read in an aircraft he's never flown, surrounded by enemies who will kill him if they find him. Earl's voice comes back to him, clear as if the old man were sitting in the back seat. "Throttle, stick, rudder, find those three things." Morrison takes a breath, starts working. The control stick is in the center. That's universal. Falls naturally to his right hand. The throttle has to be on the left side of the cockpit. He finds it. A quadrant with multiple levers. One is significantly larger than the others. That's probably the main throttle. Rudder pedals on the floor, simple enough. 3 down. Everything else is a puzzle. Morrison has 4 hours until dawn. He uses every minute. He traces wiring. Every wire in an aircraft goes somewhere. Connect to something. If you follow a wire from a gauge, you can figure out what that gauge measures. It's tedious. Slow. But it works. Airspeed indicator. Top left of the panel. Same position as in the P-51. Altimeter. Top center. Engine instruments clustered on the right side. Oil pressure. Oil temperature. Cylinder head temperature. Fuel pressure. Morrison identifies gauges by position and logic. Not perfect, but close enough. The fuel selector is a rotating switch. 4 positions. He has no idea what they are. He leaves it in the position the mechanic left it. That's probably the correct setting for both tanks. Magneto switches, left and right. Standard. Propeller control. A lever that looks similar to the P-51's system. Controls the pitch of the propeller blades. Morrison has no idea what the German labels say, but the mechanical function is the same. Then he hits the hard part. The starter. In a P-51, it's an electrical system. Press a button. The starter motor spins the engine. Simple, reliable, American. Morrison can't find a button anywhere. He spends 20 minutes searching, running his hands over every switch, every lever, every control. Nothing that looks like a starter button. Then he finds it. A T-shaped handle on the right side of the cockpit. German text that looks like Schwungmassenstarter. Morrison has no idea what that means, but it's the only control he hasn't identified. He pulls the handle. Nothing happens. He pushes it. A mechanical whine fills the cockpit, low at first, then rising, getting louder, faster. It's an inertia starter. Morrison recognizes the sound now, like winding up a toy, a flywheel spinning faster and faster, storing kinetic energy. When it reaches maximum speed, you engage it with the engine, and the stored momentum cranks the engine to life. Old technology, pre-war, but it works without draining the battery. Morrison lets the flywheel spin. 10 seconds, 20 seconds. The whine becomes a shriek. Maximum RPM. He pulls the T-handle again. The BMW 801 coughs, catches, roars to life. 14 cylinders firing. 1,700 horsepower at idle. The cockpit vibrates. The whole aircraft vibrates. The sound is apocalyptic. Every German on the airfield just heard that. Morrison doesn't hesitate. Can't hesitate. Hesitation means capture. Capture means interrogation. Interrogation means a camp if he's lucky, a bullet if he's not. He shoves the throttle forward. The FW-190 lurches. The tail comes up almost immediately. The aircraft is nose-heavy, eager to fly. German engineering. Through the pre-dawn darkness, Morrison aims between 2 hangars. Ground crew are emerging, pointing, shouting, no weapons visible. They're mechanics, not infantry. Confused, trying to process what they're seeing. 60 miles per hour, 70. The hangars rush toward him. Morrison can see faces now. Men running, some toward him, some away. Fight or flight responses. Prey animal behavior. 80 miles per hour, 90. At 90 miles per hour, Morrison pulls back on the stick. The FW-190 leaps into the air, literally leaps. The nose comes up, the wings grab the air, the aircraft claws for altitude. Morrison clears the hangar roofs by what feels like inches, maybe feet. Hard to judge. The wingtip vortices probably rattled the roofing tiles. He's airborne, flying a stolen German fighter, 200 miles behind enemy lines. And now comes the hard part. The BMW 801 engine roars at full power. Morrison climbs to 500 feet, levels off. His hands are shaking on the stick, not from fear, from 4 days without food and the adrenaline dump of what he just did. He just stole a German fighter aircraft from an active Luftwaffe airfield. The insanity of that statement hasn't fully registered yet. Morrison forces himself to think, to prioritize. The first 60 seconds after takeoff are critical. Get the aircraft configured, get oriented, get away from the airfield before someone scrambles fighters or alerts the flak batteries. Landing gear first. He finds a lever on the left console, pulls it. A mechanical thunk reverberates through the airframe. The aircraft surges forward as the drag disappears. The landing gear has retracted. Good. One problem solved. Compass next. The gyro compass sits in the center of the instrument panel. It's spinning, settling. Morrison waits for it to stabilize. The heading reads 045 degrees, northeast. He's flying away from the airfield, away from France, deeper into Czechoslovakia. Wrong direction. Morrison banks left, rolls out on heading 240, west-southwest, toward France, toward Allied lines, toward home. If he can get there, altitude decision. 500 feet seems reasonable, high enough to clear terrain, low enough to stay under radar coverage. But then Morrison reconsiders. At 500 feet, he's visible. German radar sites will track him. Fighter controllers will vector interceptors. Flak batteries will have time to calculate firing solutions. At 500 feet, he's a target. Morrison pushes the stick forward, the nose drops, the altimeter unwinds. 400 feet, 300 feet, 200 feet. He levels off at 50 feet above the ground. The Czechoslovakian forest becomes a green blur beneath his wings. Trees flash past. Church steeples appear and disappear in seconds. The aircraft is doing 280 miles per hour at treetop level. One mistake and he'll cartwheel through the forest at 300 miles per hour. There will be no ejection, no bailout, just an instantaneous conversion of flesh and metal into scattered wreckage. But at 50 feet, he's invisible to radar. The ground clutter masks his return. The curvature of the Earth puts him below the horizon for distant observers. He's too low for flak batteries, too fast for ground troops to track and target. At treetop level, Morrison is a ghost. The fuel gauge shows full tanks, both sides. The FW190 has a range of approximately 500 miles with internal fuel. France is 200 miles away. He has margin for error. Morrison settles into the flight, hands on the stick and throttle, eyes scanning instruments, then outside, then instruments again. The rhythm of flying. Muscle memory developed over 500 combat hours. The cockpit is smaller than the P-51, tighter, more cramped. His knees press against the instrument panel. But the visibility is excellent. The canopy provides a panoramic view. He can see behind without craning his neck. The FW190 handles differently than the Mustang. It's heavier, less responsive. The controls require more force. But it's stable, predictable. The aircraft wants to fly straight and level. German engineering philosophy. Build machines that are easy to operate, that forgive pilot error, that bring their crews home. Morrison thinks about the mechanic, that Obergefreiter who spent yesterday afternoon perfecting this aircraft, making sure every system worked flawlessly, every gauge accurate, every bolt torqued to specification. That man probably woke up 10 minutes ago to the sound of his aircraft starting. Probably ran to the revetment to find it gone. Probably knows his career just ended. Court-martial, demotion, possibly a firing squad if the base commander decides to make an example. Morrison didn't want that, didn't intend it. But war doesn't care about intentions. He pushes the thought away. Focus on flying, on survival. Guilt is a luxury for people who have food and shelter and a reasonable expectation of tomorrow. The sun rises behind him. Orange light spills across the landscape. Morrison can see his shadow racing across the treetops, a black cruciform shape. Predator bird. Hunter. Except he's not hunting anyone. He's running. Running west. Running home. The terrain changes. Forest gives way to farmland. ploughed fields lying fallow for winter, small villages, roads, the infrastructure of occupied Europe. Morrison checks his mental map. He should be approaching the German border, should be entering eastern France within the next 30 minutes. That's when his problems will really begin. 7:31 a.m. German airfield, Czechoslovakia. Obergefreiter Klaus Werner stands in the empty revetment staring at mud tracks and broken camouflage netting. His FW-190 is gone. Otto, his apprentice, is vomiting in the corner. The boy is 19 years old. This is his first posting. Yesterday he was learning how to time magnetos. Today he's witnessing the end of Werner's career. Werner's mind is racing, calculating, trying to understand. 4 days ago, an American P-51 was shot down 5 miles south of the airfield. The pilot bailed out. Search parties found the parachute but not the pilot. The search continued for 2 days, then stopped. The assumption was the American either died of exposure or made it to Allied lines. Nobody considered he might come north, toward the airfield, into danger instead of away from it. Werner realizes what happened. The American survived, stayed hidden, watched the airfield, saw Werner and Otto preparing the FW-190 yesterday evening, waited until the middle of the night, stole it, and Werner left the cockpit unlocked. Reichsmarshal Hermann Goering is scheduled to visit this airfield in 6 days. The FW-190 was supposed to be part of the inspection, a demonstration of Luftwaffe maintenance excellence, proof that even forward airbases maintain the highest standards. Now it's gone, stolen by an American pilot who shouldn't exist. Werner knows what comes next. The base commander will arrive, will demand explanations, will convene a court-martial. Leaving an aircraft unlocked is dereliction of duty. In wartime, that carries serious consequences. Reduction in rank. Reassignment to the Eastern Front, if he's lucky. Execution, if he's not. Werner thinks about his wife Emma. She's sick. Tuberculosis. The medication is expensive, hard to obtain. Werner's salary barely covers it. Without his rank, without his position, Emma won't get the medicine she needs. She'll die. Otto is still vomiting. The boy's career hasn't even started, and it's already over. Guilt by association. Werner wants to rage, to scream, to find the American pilot and strangle him. But rage is useless. The aircraft is gone. The damage is done. All Werner can do is report it and accept whatever comes next. He walks toward the base commander's office. His boots crunch on frozen ground. The morning sun is bright. The sky is clear. Perfect flying weather. Somewhere out there, an American pilot is flying his FW-190 toward Allied lines. Werner hopes the bastard crashes. Morrison crosses into France. He knows because the terrain changes again. The rolling farmland of Czechoslovakia gives way to the scarred battlefields of eastern France. Shell craters, destroyed villages, burned-out tanks rusting in fields, the debris of total war. This is liberated territory. Technically, the Germans withdrew months ago. American and French forces pushed through on their way to the Rhine. But Morrison isn't out of danger yet, because he's flying a German aircraft, a Focke-Wulf 190, with German markings, black crosses on the wings, swastika on the tail. Every Allied soldier who sees him will assume he's the enemy. Morrison keys the radio, or tries to. He finds what he thinks is the transmit button, presses it. Nothing happens. He tries a different switch. Still nothing. He realizes he has no idea which frequency the radio is tuned to, can't read the German labels, can't figure out how to change channels. The radio might be working perfectly, but Morrison is broadcasting into the void. No way to identify himself. No way to signal friendly forces. No way to say, "Don't shoot, I'm American." He's going to have to do this the hard way. Morrison spots movement below. A column of vehicles on a road. American trucks. He can see the white star markings. Supply convoy heading east. One of the trucks has a .50 caliber machine gun mounted on the roof. Anti-aircraft defense. The gunner is tracking Morrison's aircraft. Morrison sees the muzzle flash before he hears the sound. Tracers arc toward him, bright orange streaks. Every fifth round is a tracer, which means for every round Morrison can see there are 4 more he can't. He banks hard right. The tracers pass behind him. The gunner corrects. Fires again. More tracers. These pass closer. Morrison can hear the impacts. Faint pings as rounds hit the fuselage. None critical. Not yet. He drops lower, 20 feet above the ground. The FW-190's propeller wash kicks up dust from the road. French civilians scatter, diving into ditches. Some of them are shaking their fists at him. Morrison understands. To them, he's a German pilot, an enemy, someone who might strafe them just for entertainment. They've lived under occupation for 4 years. They have every reason to hate aircraft with swastikas on the tail. Another machine gun opens up, this one from a farmhouse, probably resistance fighters. The French resistance has been tearing apart German supply lines for months. They see a German aircraft, they shoot. The principle is sound. Morrison would do the same thing. But right now, he's on the receiving end and it's terrifying. More tracers. These rake the right wing. Morrison feels the aircraft shudder. The aileron response becomes sluggish. He's taken damage. Nothing catastrophic, but accumulating. He's 20 miles inside France and his own side is trying to kill him. Morrison pushes the throttle forward. The BMW 801 responds. The speed climbs. 300 miles per hour. 320. The faster he goes, the harder he is to hit. The French countryside blurs beneath him. Villages appear and vanish in seconds. Morrison is navigating by memory now, by terrain recognition, looking for landmarks he memorized during briefings. There. That river. The Meurthe. He's maybe 40 miles from his home airfield. A 66 or Conte. 40 miles and he's home. American infantry positions appear below. Foxholes, sandbag emplacements. A tank platoon dug in around a crossroads. Every gun swivels to track him. Morrison sees rifle fire, pistol fire, a .30 caliber machine gun. The tracers look like deadly fireworks, beautiful and lethal. None of it hits. He's too low, too fast. The angle is wrong for ground fire. But Morrison knows what's coming. His airfield is just ahead, a forward operating base for the 354th Fighter Group. And forward operating bases have anti-aircraft defenses, 40mm Bofors guns, radar directed, automated, deadly accurate. They're going to open fire the moment he comes into range, and at this altitude, they won't miss. Morrison makes a decision. He's not slowing down, not gaining altitude, not doing anything that might give the gunners an easier shot. He's going to come in hot and fast and hope recognition happens before disintegration. The airfield appears on the horizon. Morrison recognizes it instantly. A 66 or Conte. Home. 2 runways. Maintenance hangars. Rows of P-51 Mustangs parked along the taxiways. The most beautiful sight he's seen in 4 days. Except the Bofors batteries are already tracking him. Morrison can see the gun mounts swiveling, tracking his approach. 4 guns, 4 separate firing solutions, all converging on the same target. Him. He has maybe 5 seconds before they fire. Morrison does the only thing he can think of. He aims straight for the runway, makes his intentions clear. Landing approach. Emergency. Don't shoot. The Bofors gunners don't care about intentions. They see a German fighter. They have a firing solution. They engage. Morrison sees the muzzle flashes, sees the tracers climbing toward him, 40mm rounds, each one capable of tearing his aircraft in half. He banks hard left. The tracers pass through the space he just occupied. The gunners correct. Fire again. Morrison pulls back on the stick, climbs to 100 feet, not much altitude, but enough to give him options. Then he discovers the final problem. The landing gear won't come down. Morrison finds the gear lever, pulls it. Nothing happens. He pumps the lever. Still nothing. He looks for an emergency extension system. Can't find it. Can't read the German labels. Can't figure out which backup system does what. The FW-190's landing gear is hydraulic. A selector valve directs pressure to either retract or extend the gear. Morrison doesn't know this. Doesn't know he's been pulling the wrong lever for the last 5 minutes. The correct lever is 2 inches to the right, unmarked, unlabeled in any way he can understand. He's out of time and out of options. The Bofors guns are reloading, tracking, ready to fire again. Morrison has to land, now, gear or no gear. He lines up with the grass strip beside the main runway, lowers the flaps. That control he figured out. The flaps deploy. The aircraft slows, becomes more controllable. Morrison cuts the throttle. The engine note drops. The propeller windmills. The FW-190 descends. 100 feet, 50 feet, 20 feet. The grass rushes up to meet him. Morrison pulls back on the stick, flares. The aircraft hangs in the air for one perfect moment, suspended between flight and crash. Then gravity reasserts itself. The FW-190 hits the grass at 90 miles per hour. The belly scrapes. The propeller blades hit the ground and bend. The engine cowling crumples. The aircraft slides. Dirt and grass and debris spray in all directions. A rooster tail of destruction marking Morrison's path. 300 yards. That's how far the FW-190 slides before friction and destroyed metal and the laws of physics bring it to a halt. Morrison sits in the cockpit. Engine silent. Propeller destroyed. Fuselage bent. But intact. Survivable. He's alive. He made it. Morrison looks out through the canopy, sees military police vehicles racing toward him, jeeps with mounted machine guns, men with rifles, all converging on the crashed German fighter. He raises his hands, slides the canopy back, stands up on the wing. His flight suit is torn. His face is covered in 4 days of grime and beard growth. His ankle is swollen to twice its normal size. He probably looks like a scarecrow, a ghost, something that crawled out of a grave. The MPs arrive, weapons raised, screaming in English. "Get down from the aircraft, hands on your head, down now." Morrison complies, climbs down from the wing, winces as his ankle takes his weight, puts his hands on his head. The MPS surround him, rifles pointed at his chest, fingers on triggers. One of them speaks. A sergeant, late 20s, combat infantry badge on his uniform. "Identify yourself." Morrison's voice is hoarse from 4 days without proper water. "Captain Jack Morrison, 381st Fighter Squadron, 363rd Fighter Group." The sergeant doesn't lower his rifle. "Bullshit. You just landed in a German aircraft." "I know," Morrison says. "I stole it." The MPs look at each other. Confusion. Disbelief. This isn't in any manual they've read. "You stole a German fighter?" the sergeant asks. "Yes." "From where?" "A Luftwaffe airfield in Czechoslovakia." More looks. One of the MPs laughs. Not because it's funny, because the absurdity is overwhelming. The sergeant keys his radio. "This is Gate 7. We have a situation. American pilot. Claims he stole a German aircraft. Need intelligence officer immediately." A voice crackles back. "Say again." "You heard me right. Just send the intel officer." The MPS zip-tie Morrison's hands. Not tight, but secure. They put him in the back of a jeep. Drive him to the guard shack. Morrison sits in a wooden chair. The room is small, bare. 1 table, 2 chairs. A single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Interrogation room basics. He waits. 20 minutes later, a man in an officer's uniform enters. Major's oak leaves on his collar. Intelligence branch insignia. He's maybe 40 years old. Thin, sharp eyes. The kind of man who notices things. "I'm Major Robert Hayes," the man says. "I need to ask you some questions." Morrison nods. "Ask." Name, rank, serial number. "Captain Jack Morrison, O-792644, 381st Fighter Squadron." Hayes pulls out a clipboard, scans a roster. His expression doesn't change. "Captain Morrison was shot down 4 days ago, November 2nd, over Czechoslovakia. His status is listed as killed in action, KIA 0947 hours. Morrison meets his eyes. I'm clearly not dead. So it would seem. Hayes sits down. But I need proof. Anyone can memorize a name and serial number. The Germans train agents to impersonate captured Americans. Check my fingerprints. Check my dental records. We will. In the meantime, explain how you arrived at this airfield in a German aircraft. Morrison tells the story. All of it. The bailout. The 4 days. The decision to go north instead of south. Finding the airfield. Watching the mechanics prepare the FW-190. Waiting until 3 a.m. Stealing it. Flying 200 miles at treetop level while everyone tried to kill him. Hayes listens without interrupting. Takes notes. His expression remains neutral. When Morrison finishes, Hayes is quiet for a long moment. That, Hayes finally says, is the most insane story I've ever heard. I know, Morrison says. You expect me to believe you stole a German fighter, flew it across enemy territory, and landed here. The aircraft is sitting on your airfield. Go look at it. Hayes stands, walks to the door, speaks to someone outside, returns. They wait. 30 minutes pass. Morrison's exhaustion is catching up with him. 4 days of survival. The adrenaline crash. His body wants to shut down. The door opens. A different officer enters, holding a telegram. Fingerprint match confirmed, the officer says. He's Morrison. Hayes looks at Morrison with something approaching respect, or maybe disbelief. Hard to tell. Captain Morrison, Hayes says. You're free to go, and I owe you an apology. You were doing your job, Major. The zip ties are cut. Morrison stands. His legs almost give out. Hayes catches his arm. When did you last eat? Hayes asks. 4 days ago. Toast and coffee. Hayes opens the door, shouts to someone outside. Get this man to the mess hall and find the flight surgeon. Morrison steps outside. The afternoon sun is bright, warm. He's back on Allied soil, back among his own people. A staff car pulls up. Colonel George Bickle steps out, the commanding officer of the 354th Fighter Group, Morrison's boss. Bickle stares at him. Morrison, you're alive. Yes, sir. We filed your KIA report 3 days ago. Sorry about that, sir. Bickle walks around Morrison, looking him up and down, taking in the torn flight suit, the beard, the hollow eyes. Where the hell have you been? Bickle asks. Morrison allows himself a small smile. Sir, I took the scenic route. Bickle looks past Morrison at the destroyed FW-190 sitting in the grass, the German markings clearly visible, the swastika on the tail. Is that what I think it is? Bickle asks. Yes, sir. FW-190. I borrowed it from the Luftwaffe. You borrowed? Bickle stops, starts again. You stole a German fighter and flew it home. Seemed like a good idea at the time, sir. Bickle is quiet for a long moment. Then he starts laughing. Not polite laughter. Real laughter. The kind that comes from pure astonishment. Get this man a meal, Bickle orders. A shower, a bunk, and someone start the paperwork for a medal. I don't know which medal, but something. Stealing aircraft from the enemy has to count for something. Morrison is escorted to the mess hall. They give him soup first. His stomach can't handle solid food yet. Then bread. Then more soup. He eats slowly, carefully. His body remembers how to process food, but it needs time to adjust. Later in the barracks, Morrison lies in an actual bed with actual sheets. The first real rest in 4 days. He thinks about the FW-190, about the mechanic who built it so perfectly, about the German soldiers searching for him, about the French civilians who dove into ditches, about Earl Hutchins and a conversation 5 years ago about German cockpits and impossible situations. The story will spread. Morrison knows this. By tomorrow, every pilot in the 9th Air Force will know about the man who stole a German fighter. But that's tomorrow's problem. Tonight, Morrison sleeps. The story spreads like fire through dry timber. By morning, every pilot in the 354th Fighter Group knows. The man who died 4 days ago walked back into camp flying a stolen German fighter. By noon, the neighboring squadrons have heard. By evening, the entire 9th Air Force is talking about Captain Jack Morrison and his borrowed Fokker Wolf. Morrison spends the next 3 days in debriefing sessions. Army intelligence wants to know everything: the layout of the German airfield, the number of aircraft, the condition of the hangars, the strength of the defences, the morale of the ground crews. Every detail Morrison observed during his 4-day surveillance. He tells them what he remembers: the Obergefreiter and his apprentice, the maintenance procedures, the security gaps, the patrol schedules. An intelligence analyst takes notes. "This information is valuable, Captain. The airfield you describe matches one we've been tracking. We can use this for targeting." Morrison nods. He doesn't mention the mechanic by name, doesn't describe the care the man took with his work. Some details aren't relevant to military intelligence. The FW-190 is transported to a maintenance hangar. Engineers swarm over it, taking measurements, photographing systems, reverse engineering German technology. One of them, a civilian contractor from Wright Field, examines the engine. Whoever maintained this aircraft knew what he was doing. This BMW 801 is in perfect condition, every tolerance within spec, every adjustment correct. Morrison watches from a distance. He was good at his job. "Too bad for him, you stole his masterpiece," the engineer says. Morrison doesn't respond. There's nothing useful to say. April 2nd, 1945. 5 months have passed since Morrison's return. 5 months of missions, of combat, of the grinding routine that defines a fighter pilot's war. He's been promoted to first lieutenant. His confirmed kill count stands at 10. Not enough for ace status yet, but close. The silver star he earned in September sits in a box in his footlocker. He never wears it. Medals are for dress uniforms and ceremonies. In combat, you wear your rank and nothing else. The war is ending. Everyone can feel it. The Germans are retreating on all fronts. The Luftwaffe is running out of fuel, out of pilots, out of time. Some missions encounter no enemy aircraft at all, just empty sky and the distant sound of artillery. But not today. Today, Morrison leads a 4-ship formation of P-51 Mustangs on a reconnaissance mission near Schweinfurt, Germany. His wingmen are men he trusts: Captain Robert Davis, Captain Frank Burke, Lieutenant Peter Kowalski. They've flown together for months, developed the kind of mutual understanding that keeps people alive. They're at 15,000 feet, cruising, scanning the sky for targets of opportunity. Morrison sees them first, above and ahead of, and stacked between 18,000 and 25,000 feet, a massive formation of German fighters. He counts, stops counting at 40, counts again more carefully. 60 aircraft, maybe more. Bf-109s and FW-190s, the newest variants, G-10 Messerschmitts and D-9 Focke-Wulfs, late-war German fighters with performance that matches or exceeds the P-51. Morrison's formation has 4 aircraft. The mathematics are brutal: 15-1 odds. The Germans have altitude advantage, energy advantage, numerical superiority in every sense. Standard doctrine is clear: don't engage, break contact, report the enemy formation, let other squadrons vector in to intercept, live to fight another day. Morrison's hand hovers over the radio transmit switch. He thinks about the FW-190 he stole, about the calculation he made sitting in that cockpit at 3 a.m. The rational choice was surrender. The safe choice was walking away. He chose neither. He looks at the German formation again. 60 aircraft, 4 Americans. The rational choice is retreat. Morrison keys his radio. "Hawk Flight, this is Hawk Lid. Bandits above us. Large formation. We're engaging." A moment of silence. Then 3 clicks. Acknowledgement. No questions. No hesitation. Davis comes on the radio. "Hawk Lead, that's a lot of Germans." "I can count Hawk 2. Just making sure you noticed." "I noticed." Morrison pushes the throttle forward. The Merlin engine responds. The P-51 accelerates, climbing, heading straight for the enemy formation. His wingmen follow. 4 American fighters climbing into 60 German aircraft. It's the kind of tactical decision that gets analyzed in after-action reports. That becomes a cautionary tale about over-aggression and poor judgment. That results in courts-martial if it goes wrong. But Morrison isn't thinking about after-action reports. He's thinking about the same calculation that made him steal a German aircraft. The same logic that's kept him alive through 172 combat missions. What else can I do? The German formation is flying in a loose defensive pattern. Fuel conservation. Standard procedure when no immediate threat is present. They're probably heading back to base after a patrol. Pilots relaxed. Guards down. They don't expect an attack. Morrison slips his flight into the back of the formation, uses the sun angle, approaches from their 6 o'clock. The blind spot. In the lead, BF 109, Lieutenant Josef Hartmann is thinking about fuel. He's 28 years old, 5 years into this war, long enough to see most of his training class die, long enough to know that survival is part skill, part luck, mostly about conserving resources. Right now, his fuel gauge shows 40% remaining, enough to reach Würzburg airfield with a comfortable margin. No reason to hurry, no reason to maintain combat spread. The radio crackles. Hartmann Mustangs 4 o'clock low. Hartmann's head snaps around. He sees them. 4 P-51s, climbing fast, almost in firing range. His mind races. 4 Mustangs attacking 60 German fighters. Impossible. It's a diversion. The main force must be behind them, or above, or waiting in ambush. How many total, he asks. Wir just 4. That can't be right. 4 aircraft don't attack 60, not unless they're suicidal or insane. Where's the rest of their formation? Hartmann demands. I don't see any others. The Americans are climbing into the formation now. Hartmann sees muzzle flashes. One of his wingmen explodes, just disintegrates in mid-air, fuel and ammunition detonating simultaneously. The radio erupts in chaos. Wo sind sie? Where are they? Ich bin getroffen. I'm hit. Wie viele Amerikaner? How many Americans? Hartmann tries to organize a defense, but his pilots are scattered, panicking, breaking formation, every man trying to save himself. He sees another Mustang, fires, misses. The American rolls away, too fast, too agile. A BF 109 spins past Hartmann's canopy, trailing smoke. The pilot is dead or unconscious. The aircraft tumbles toward the earth. Hartmann's mind is trying to track threats, trying to count attackers. He sees traces from multiple directions. His brain insists there must be 15, maybe 20 Americans. The alternative that 4 aircraft are tearing apart his formation is too humiliating to accept. Another explosion. Another German fighter gone. Hartmann makes a decision. He brakes, dives away, full throttle, running. He's not alone. The entire formation is scattering. 60 aircraft fleeing from 4. Morrison fires his last burst. Ammunition depleted. All 6 guns empty. 5 kills in 3 minutes. He checks on his wingman. Davis got 3. Burke got 4. Kowalski got 3. 15 German aircraft destroyed. 0 American losses. The remaining Germans are gone. 45 aircraft scattered across 50 miles of German countryside, running for their bases. Their fuel states now critical. Their morale shattered. Morrison keys the radio. Hawk flight form on me. We're going home. The 4 Mustangs bank west, heading for friendly territory, heading home. Morrison's hands are shaking, not from fear, from the adrenaline come down, from the realization of what just happened. 4 against 60, and they won. Not because of superior numbers, not because of better aircraft, because 60 pilots saw 4 attackers and assumed there must be more, assumed it was a trap, assumed they were outnumbered. Psychological warfare, the same principle that let Morrison steal a German fighter, do something so audacious, so unexpected that the enemy can't process it. Their assumptions become weapons against them. Morrison thinks about Earl Hutchins, about crop dusters and German cockpits and impossible choices. The old man would approve. Hartmann lands at a different airfield. His fuel tanks are nearly empty. His hands are shaking on the stick. He taxis to the parking area, shuts down the engine, sits in the cockpit for a long moment. The base commander is waiting. A Hauptmann, captain rank, angry. Lieutenant Hartmann, report. Hartmann climbs out, stands at attention. Sir, we were attacked by American Mustangs, large formation, at least 20, maybe 30 aircraft. We were forced to scatter. The Hauptmann's expression doesn't change. Our radar tracked your formation. And the Americans. The Americans had 4 aircraft. 4. Hartman feels something cold in his stomach. That's not possible. The radar operator counted 4 returns, 4 aircraft. You scattered a 60-aircraft formation because of 4 Americans. Silence. Other pilots are listening. Word will spread. Hartman knows this. His career is over. You don't live down something like this. Dismissed, the Hauptmann says. We'll discuss your transfer tomorrow. Transfer. Eastern Front, or Training Command if he's lucky. Either way, Hartman will never lead a combat formation again. He walks to the pilot's quarters, doesn't look at anyone, doesn't speak. 4 Americans, 60 Germans, and the Germans ran. The humiliation is absolute. April 9th, 1945. A 66 Orconte, France. Colonel Bickel pins the Distinguished Service Cross on Morrison's uniform. Second highest combat decoration, just below the Medal of Honor. The citation reads, "For extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy. First Lieutenant Jack Morrison on April 2nd, 1945, while leading a 4-aircraft patrol, engaged a vastly superior enemy force of approximately 60 aircraft. Completely disregarding his personal safety and the enemy's overwhelming numerical superiority and tactical advantage of altitude, he led his element in a direct attack on the hostile force, personally destroying 5 enemy aircraft and damaging others. His aggressive fighting spirit and devotion to duty reflect the highest credit upon himself and the Army Air Forces." Morrison stands at attention, accepts the medal, salutes. Later in the Officers' Club, Davis raises a glass. To Hawk Morrison, the only pilot insane enough to attack 60 Germans with 4 aircraft. "I prefer tactically audacious," Morrison says. "You prefer not getting shot down," Burke adds. They drink, laugh, the camaraderie of men who've survived what should have killed them. Morrison is officially the last ace in a day in the European theater. No other American pilot will achieve 5 kills in a single mission before Germany surrenders. The war ends 29 days later, May 8, 1945. Victory in Europe. Morrison's final tally, 172 combat missions. 15 confirmed aerial victories, Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medal with clusters. He's 21 years old. The years compress. Decades fold into paragraphs. Morrison stays in uniform. The Army Air Forces become the United States Air Force in 1947. Morrison transitions from propeller aircraft to jets. He joins the Acrojets, America's first jet aerobatic demonstration team. Flying F-80 Shooting Stars, the thrill of speed, of pushing machines to their limits, of discovering what's possible. Korea, 1950 to 1953. Morrison flies 57 combat missions in F-86 Sabres with the 336th Fighter Interceptor Squadron. MiG Alley, jet combat at 600 miles per hour. Different war, different aircraft, same principles. He commands the 336th from 1955 to 1956. Colonel's eagles on his shoulders. The farm kid from Union Springs running a fighter squadron. 1968 to 1971. Colonel Morrison, now 44 years old, flies 286 combat missions in F-100 Super Sabres. Close air support, bombing runs, strafing missions. The same work he did in 1944, just with different technology. His pilots call him Old Man, not disrespectfully, with something approaching awe. The old man who still flies combat at an age when most men are retiring. Who still pulls 6 Gs in a turn. Who still comes back from missions that kill younger men. 3 wars. 3 generations of aircraft. 515 total combat missions. The pattern holds. The calculation remains the same. What else can I do? Morrison retires in 1973, age 49, full colonel, returns to Union Springs, New York, buys a small house,
flies civilian aircraft for recreation, gives occasional speeches at Air Force bases. He doesn't talk much about the stolen FW-190. When pressed, he says it seemed like the logical choice at the time. When asked if he'd do it again, he says, "In a heartbeat." The years pass quietly. Morrison fades from public attention. The military history books mention him in footnotes. The stolen fighter becomes a legend. One of those stories that seems too incredible to be true. Except it is true. The after-action reports exist. The intelligence debriefs. The photographs of the destroyed FW-190 sitting on a 66 Ocontes runway.
History doesn't care about believability, only facts. June 1997. Fantasy of Flight Museum, Polk City, Florida. Morrison is 73 years old, grey hair, weathered face, still straight-backed, still sharp-eyed. The museum has invited him to an air show. They want him to fly a P-51D Mustang, same type he flew in 1944. The aircraft is privately owned, maintained in perfect flying condition, authentic down to the last rivet. Morrison walks around the aircraft, runs his hand along the fuselage. The metal is warm from the Florida sun. "You still remember how to fly one of these?" someone asks. Morrison smiles. "Like riding a bicycle." He climbs into the cockpit. The same cockpit he sat in 53 years ago. Everything familiar. The instrument layout, the stick, the throttle, the smell of aviation fuel and hydraulic fluid. Some things don't change. Morrison starts the engine. The Merlin roars to life. That distinctive sound. 12 cylinders, 1,600 horsepower. Music. He taxis to the runway, lines up, advances the throttle. The P-51 accelerates. The tail comes up. At 90 miles per hour, Morrison rotates. The aircraft leaps into the air, just like it did 53 years ago. He climbs to 1,000 feet. Then he starts the demonstration. A loop, rolling the aircraft inverted at the top. Precise, controlled. The G-forces press him into his seat. 4 Gs, 5. His vision grays slightly at the edges. He ignores it. A barrel roll, the horizon spinning, the aircraft perfectly coordinated. Aileron rudder elevator working in harmony. An Immelmann turn, climbing, rolling, reversing direction. The same maneuver he used dozens of times to escape German fighters. On the ground, spectators watch. A 73-year-old man is flying aerobatics that would challenge pilots half his age, pulling G-forces that would grey out younger men. Someone in the crowd says, "How is he doing that?" A retired Air Force pilot responds, 515 combat missions, 3 wars, that's how. Morrison lands, taxis back to the parking area, shuts down the engine, climbs out of the cockpit. A reporter approaches, young woman, maybe 25, holds a microphone. "Colonel Morrison, what were you thinking up there?" Morrison considers the question. "Same thing I've always thought. What's the airplane capable of? What am I capable of? Let's find out." "Any advice for young pilots?" "Same advice I got 58 years ago. The labels don't matter. Throttle, stick, rudder. Master those and you can fly anything." "Do you ever think about the German mechanic, the one whose plane you stole?" Morrison's expression shifts. Something harder, something that carries weight. "Every time I tell the story," he says, "I think about him, wonder what happened to him, whether he survived the war, whether he forgave me." "Do you regret it?" "No. I did what I had to do, same as he did, same as every man who fought in that war. Regret is a luxury. We did what survival required." The reporter nods, thanks him, walks away. Morrison stands beside the P-51, looking at it, remembering. Earl Hutchins died in 1989. Heart attack. Age 99. Lived long enough to see his student become a colonel. Lived long enough to know the prophecy came true. Someday you might sit in a German cockpit. And someday became November 6th, 1944. Morrison wonders what Earl would say about the intervening 53 years, about Korea, about 515 missions, about the question that defined a life. What else can I do? He thinks Earl would nod, say something like, "You found out?" and leave it at that. April 25th, 1998. St. Cloud, Florida. Colonel Jack Morrison dies of prostate cancer. He's 74 years old, surrounded by family, peaceful as deaths go. The obituary runs in the New York Times, 2 paragraphs, mentions the Distinguished Service Cross, the 3 wars, the 515 combat missions. Doesn't mention the stolen fighter. Not enough space for that story. He's buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Section 64, grave 6922. Among the heroes of every American war since the Revolution, within sight of the tomb of the unknown soldier, across the river from the Lincoln Memorial. The headstone is simple, white marble, standard military issue. John H. Morrison, Colonel, United States Air Force, World War II. Korea, January 28, 1924, April 25, 1998. Below that, his decorations. Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Legion of Merit, Distinguished Flying Cross with oak leaf clusters, Air Medal with clusters, Purple Heart. The headstone doesn't mention the Focke-Wulf 190, doesn't mention the 4 days in the forest, doesn't mention the belly landing with no landing gear, doesn't mention the MPs pointing rifles at his face, doesn't mention Colonel Bickle asking, "Where the hell have you been?" Some stories don't fit on headstones, but they live in the memory of anyone who hears them, who understands what they represent. There are 2 ways to tell the story of Jack Morrison. The first is the legend. The downed pilot who stole a German fighter from an active airfield, who figured out the controls by trial and error, who flew 200 miles back to Allied territory while every gun in Europe shot at him, who survived 4 days behind enemy lines with no food, no water, and a twisted ankle. The second is the documented record, the ace with 15 confirmed kills, the Silver Star recipient, the Distinguished Service Cross winner, the man who led 4 aircraft against 60 and won, the pilot who flew 515 combat missions across 3 wars and survived them all. Both versions are true. Both are remarkable. But here's what matters. In November 1944, an American pilot found himself alone, unarmed, stranded 200 miles behind enemy lines. The rational choice was surrender. The safe choice was giving up. Jack Morrison chose differently. He looked at a German fighter aircraft covered in unfamiliar instruments and saw not an obstacle but an opportunity. He climbed into a cockpit he'd never seen, started an engine he had never operated, flew an aircraft he'd never touched before, not because he was reckless, because he refused to accept that his options were limited to the ones that seemed possible. 4 months later, faced with 60 enemy fighters and 4 friendly aircraft, he made the same calculation. The rational choice was retreat. The safe choice was survival. He chose attack, and 15 German pilots never made it home. 50 years later, at age 73, he asked the same question one more time. What am I capable of? The answer more than anyone thought possible. November 6, 1944. 3:03 a.m. Morrison's hand rests on the FW-190's canopy release. Cold metal, frozen breath, distant footsteps. The moment before impossible becomes history. The moment before survival becomes legend. The moment before a farm kid from upstate New York proves that the only real limits are the ones we accept. He pulls the canopy. He climbs in. He finds out. He